This episode of the Check Your Six podcast. We are light on collegiate topics this time around, but we have a couple guests this time, or at least one right now. We'll see if the second one catches up. I think he was up a little late, scrimming hard, it looks like. But right now we're joined by Jzwills. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm super excited.
Now, I mean, you've really interacted with the show the last couple of weeks. You've left a few messages for Syntax and I talking about the coin flip on the map decider topic, which has been one of the most discussed topics on the podcast this season. But on top of that, you've been busy with a whole bunch of casting going on for the various leagues going on. So, I mean, that's a brief overview, but let's talk about you and what your role is within the Rainbow Six community.
Sure. I mean, I played Siege for the first year and a half, back in the day, and then it kind of fell to the wayside, and I didn't really. I kind of lost interest. But then, start of quarantine, one of my friends got a gaming PC. He got into Siege, and his addiction to the game kind of roped me back in to play with him. I realized that I was just bad at the game and I couldn't aim. So, I decided, what would be more fun, trying my hand at casting if I could. So I started by casting some of his scrims because he wanted to get more competitive. And that kind of just cascaded into what it is today, which is I have, in 2 months since I've started casting, very brief, stint so far in casting. But since I started, I have joined all the collegiate leagues and have my toes in the water just about every place. I now cast for some T3 leagues as well. So SCS, which is one of the more prominent T3 leagues with and SCL and a couple of upcoming leagues, SOAR Gaming League and others. And I'm just getting onto the staff of those. So I'm just super excited to continue to bring my style and my energy to collegiate Siege, especially. I've really enjoyed collegiate Siege the most because something about those college rivalries just is just fascinating. And while in T3 you have these orgs and they have their rivalries of their own, but it's just, I mean, it's good old college rivalries can't really be beat on any level. And over this last month, I've really enjoyed getting to know people in the community. That's why I reached out to you guys, because I just really want to, get more involved and get to know some of these teams more as I cast them repeatedly. I'm starting to get a feel for some of the team styles and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I guess that's kind of how I ended up here.
That's awesome that you've gotten so involved so quickly, and that connection with a friend getting interested in the game is absolutely one of those things that ends up roping so many people into whatever game. WoW especially being popular right now. Mm-hmm. I've seen more people dipping their toes into WoW either for the first time because everyone's pressuring them to, or being like, oh, it's been years since I've played, I should maybe try again. But Rainbow Six and anyone who's got a competitive chip on their shoulder, I could see being sucked in and wanting to play with their friends on that. So welcome to the community for sure.
Thank you.
I don't know if it's surprising or unsurprising because of quarantine, but the new WoW expansion, Shadowlands, is has become the fastest selling game, I think, of all time, PC wise. I'm sorry, at least.
Yeah, I can't say I'm surprised. I mean, the game started 15 years ago, and then everyone grew up, and now everyone who has careers is paying for their accounts, paying for their family accounts. Mm-hmm. They get to stay home and relive WoW, and probably the best expansion that's come out in a long time. So, I could see this being just a super popular game right now, absolutely, as indicated by sales. But
also, update here. Looks like Juhcuzi is booting up his PC. I told him to join us. So
rad.
Okay. He'll be joining us pretty soon.
So we'll get another intro there. But for now, we can keep things rolling. Now, while we wait for Juhcuzi, we can dive into maybe some collegiate discussion. We'll cover the Texas Tech University and the Grand Canyon University finals that were in the CEA Open League. Now, Jay-Z, you actually casted the match. why don't you give us a little bit of a rundown of what you saw in that matchup, and we can dive into some topics.
Sure. I mean, it was a really good matchup, and I think everyone going into the match expected Texas Tech to kind of just steamroll their way through, because if you look at their match history, the way they performed all season, they only went 7-5 like one time. Every other team was 7-1, 7-0, 7-2. They just destroy their competition. So heading into the final, I expected them to do well. I think everyone did. But with GCU came out swinging, I think everyone was taken aback, and it was really great to see. In terms of the overall progression of the match, I think the theme was Texas Tech swinging everything and GCU figuring out slowly how to punish them for it. And by the end of the night, I think that simply was the way it went. But the one thing I always talk about when I cast is how teams change mid-game to adapt to the other team's play style, and that is, in my opinion, what separates the good teams from the better teams from Akron. Like, you need to be able to adapt on the fly to what you're seeing out of your opponents, and make them pay for their mistakes, or just figure out a way, get those chinks in the armor, and figure out a way to really make something happen there. And I think that's exactly what GCU did and what Texas Tech failed to do.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I 100% agree as well.
The map 1 was really interesting to see GCU come out to such a strong lead when it's just like, one, it's Texas Tech, and then two, this is not how this map was supposed to play out. Coming out with, what was it, 5-1 before Texas Tech even got, or 5-0 before Texas Tech even got around, or 4-0. Either way, it was attackers taking rounds that they shouldn't be taking, and then Texas Tech flipped the script in the second half, and again, attackers taking round that they shouldn't have been, and it was just done. And map 1 swinging so hard, I think, was a real test to both teams' mental strength, but then also to, maybe we need to take this other team seriously. I think GCU was taking them seriously from the beginning, but GCU may not have been prepared for the lead that they started commanding and then couldn't find a way back to hold on to it. Now, Texas Tech finding a way back in, turning it on, waking up, however you want to put it, was suddenly a force to be reckoned with, which was really impressive to see. But then to see that GCU didn't lose that mentality going into map 2 and really did well there, but then in map 3 just cranking it up and winning 7-3 on that last map, that was not at all what I expected. I completely agree with you where I was expecting Texas Tech to kind of walk all over GCU being kind of that mid to high tier team the last several years, but then Texas Tech having a stellar showing and part of the Southern Belt that I just fear for any team going up against. But Texas Tech having such an amazing showing against Akron just a few weeks prior in the CR6 league, that was probably the best match of the season, followed up by their matchup against UGA in the Face It preseason finals. But Akron being challenged by Texas Tech really put them on the map. So when I saw GCU coming up, I'm like, I know GCU's good, but are they Texas Tech Akron good? And I couldn't believe how the scoreline actually turned out. Like it was close, and at the same time not. The commanding presence that GCU had on map 3, it just looked, they weren't toying with their enemy, but they just shut them down on every opportunity.
Well, I think there was a little bit of banter going on in the CR6 like trash talk channels after the match, and even though that's not where the game happened, but it's still where the trash talk went down. And Bait on Texas Tech tried to defend his team by saying they hadn't practiced in weeks and they did great for not having practiced, or something along those lines. But I think that simply is just an indication how committed GCU were to the finals and how much homework they did. They were clearly well prepared. I mean, and it makes sense. I mean, going into a final as the underdog, you're the ones with the responsibility. You have to do your homework. You got to prepare. And I think Texas Tech kind of just tried to rely on their gun skill as much as they could. And I think on paper and what we saw, Texas Tech's gun skill was simply better. Buck and Bate on Texas Tech. Buck has, I think, the highest KD across all the collegiate leagues this entire season.
Yep.
He has put up ridiculous numbers, and Bate as well. And Bate is also on a pretty strong T3 roster called First Attempt, also known as Dallas Vendetta, going over a rebrand. But like, these two players are extremely talented, and it definitely showed in the match, but they tried to just take the rank style of play, the just try to just gun down GCU. That was all they really brought to the table. And while it worked at times when that aggression was unpunished or just too much for GCU to handle, GCU found the way to make those changes and just completely shut down really dumb decisions at some points, by Texas Tech. And I think that the winner, I think they came out, they earned it. They simply earned it because they were more prepared. They played smarter. They played more strategic. And that's why I think GCU, walked away with it at the end of the day.
The last thing that really, like, if Texas Tech hadn't practiced in weeks, one of the things that's going to have thrown them off is that there was a patch that came in at the beginning of December. So not only was it that they hadn't played together, they hadn't played with any of the changes or really practiced hard with that. So yeah, that's just putting more of an uphill battle against them. But major kudos to GCU for coming out with what I would call a convincing win against Texas Tech. Because, I mean, as much as not practicing for a few weeks will throw you off, these guys were still Akron ready. So if they kind of degraded over time, they're still going to be better than the majority of the teams in the rest of the league. So huge congrats to GCU for coming out for that convincing win and kind of cementing themselves as a team to watch in the spring as we go into CR6, Face It, CEA, all of that. All those spring leagues are going to be just popping off with those guys. And I believe Texas Tech and GCU both qualified for the CEA Invite League just by winning their matches, or they have to play relegation.
Go through relegations. Yeah, they have a small relegations bracket. They both theoretically could qualify. It's like the bottom 2 invite players or bottom 4 invite teams or something enter that bracket with them, and then they duke it out. But I do think it's almost a guaranteed placement to invite, simply because some of those invite teams have completely fallen by the wayside, haven't really played a lot, have really kind of fallen off the map a little bit. Like Florida International, they disbanded their roster completely, I think, and then are trying to put one back together. And I think that's going to be a pretty easy removal from invite for them if you're GCU or Texas Tech.
That's fair. All right, we got our second guest here, Juhcuzi. Welcome to the show. Oh no, now we can't hear you.
Muted?
He's coming. And of course, Discord does that lovely thing of reorganizing all the portraits after someone turns on the camera. And he's coming back.
You probably got that Discord bug.
Hello.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Hey, this is a great introduction. Me being late for the first time. Sorry. I was up late streaming last night. But yeah, guess I'm kind of right on time a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Hey, this is a lot more technical than I thought it was gonna be. Y'all are talking about Face It and all that.
Oh no, that's all good.
That game. Did y'all watch that game that he had sent to me in that link before this happened? Okay.
So Jay-Z casted it. I watched it. Syntax, did you end up watching it?
The which one again?
Texas Tech versus GCU.
No, I didn't watch it.
Okay.
So I mean, this was just a quick wrap up. I wanted to make sure that we have time to get to our actual conversation of the state of the game coming from multiple perspectives. So, Juhcuzi, why don't you do a bit of an intro on who you are and what your role is within the Rainbow Six community?
Okay. So it's kind of crazy because it is starting to feel like I do have a role in the community now because like I started last year making Siege content. All it was literally me doing voiceovers over like tips and tricks, but it was like educating and entertaining at the same time. So that's why it kind of clicked. Just like, angles and C4 spots and how to find your sensitivity, simple stuff like that. I'm kind of trying to cater towards the silver to gold and low plat area because that's where I belong, because I came from Xbox. So I'm not like, somebody just super impressive. Like, I'm not crazy. I'm like slightly above average, like a, consistent plat to plat 3 to plat 2 player on console though. So yeah, my perspective is gonna be a lot different than like any of y'all's. I mean, I don't know, have any of y'all came from console or anything? Like
I mean, I didn't come from console. I've played on both systems, right? I used to be pretty good at console games, but now I get on a console and it's like I miss shooting the broadside of a barn. So yeah.
That's just me on whatever platform I'm on. I just cannot shoot in Rainbow Six. It's just, it's a foreign language to me.
Yeah. So the thing is, like, I had one account that was 250. I had another account that was 150. I had another account that was like 130 on Xbox. And now I'm on PC with a level 100 account. So I put a lot of time in this game. So
that is a lot of time.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, even with all this time, I still don't know everything because nobody can learn anything. Nobody can learn everything about this game. It's just too much. Like, so it still gets really detailed in the higher level of play, and I haven't even dipped my foot into that. Like, like me and my rank stack. I would say we are like a smarter than the average group, but some of the pro league changes that we see, because they kind of like nerf and buff based off of pro league, some of those still like confuse us sometimes. They throw us off sometimes, because like the Goyo change, it makes sense because he had too much utility, and then the Jaeger change, we all understand that, and we haven't been affected by it in rank, but we know the pro league, I know it fucked them up. I know it did. It had to. Like, even if it hasn't even been implemented into it yet, but I know they're changing everything, because having those ADSs, having 2 ADSs stacked on one window, that's saving you a lot of time. But yeah, so I know
that's an interesting perspective, because if they're, I mean, I would be curious about Syntax and Jay-Z, about your perspectives on this, about, are they balancing the game for Pro League, or are they balancing it for the rank stack or just public games? Because contrary to most other esports games, the games are balanced for the single player pug matches and really not focused in one area or another. It's mostly for individuals to be able to come in, play, and have fun and feel productive, so that it's not a hyper competitive environment, because the majority of money comes in from casual players.
So if you go look on the patch notes, it actually, like, whenever they make a change to the game, they actually tell you what the target group is for that nerf or buff, whatever. But other than that, some of the things that they do, they try and cater around towards the esports scene, because obviously, like, that's has the most visibility, right? But also at the same time, they love to go ahead and fix certain things that are frustrating for casual players, that may not like be beneficial towards Pro League, but beneficial to the rest of the player base. Because how Pro League players handle things is obviously different from how casual players handle scenarios, which is why, like, like casual was a minute longer than ranked, because you know all the competitive people, they know how to play the game efficiently, right? On the casual players, you know, one, they're just playing to have, you know, a casual time, but also at the same time, like, you know, some people may not be as good as others, so they give them extra time to do so. So it's just certain quality of life changes that kind of help both sides of the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like one change that wasn't technically for Pro League, like one of the last ones I seen was, I can't remember which one it was, but giving Frost like the secondary shotgun to make rotates. Like, you think anybody in Pro League is gonna care about that? Like, that doesn't seem like that's something for the casual player, because they think that Frost isn't good enough, or, you know, isn't useful enough. But
I personally think Frost is slept on, not just because her Frost mats are easy to spot, or they may get some easy kills from the less experienced players, but her main gun absolutely slaps, and a lot of people don't understand that.
yeah, nah, it's pretty fire, bro. It's pretty fire. I like to have a conversation about guns whenever y'all down to get into it. But yeah, bro, I'm not gonna come here with like any top tier knowledge or anything. I'm literally just a ranked dude, honestly, trying to find my way.
Well,
That's fair.
Yeah, so I mean, to your point about, you know, where does the balancing, who are they focusing on in the balancing, and I think this is a conversation that people have been having in the community for years, and it's been a point of frustration for ranked players. You know, when they're like, why are we seeing these changes that don't mean any sense to us? It's just because of that Pro League scene. But I think Ubisoft is struggling with this internally as well. You know, like, the money comes in from your silver players and your gold players. That is where your majority of your player base is, and that is, you know, where the most of the game is played. But with these recent changes, I think the game is taking further steps towards team coordination, and it requires more of that, at least to enjoy it. And I don't know if simply because, you know, my hours in Siege have been accumulating and I just enjoy the game less if it's not in a comp, you know, 10-man kind of setting, or it's simply because the game has indeed gone in that direction. And I think there have been a lot of changes that have forced more teamwork with utility balancing and making like certain operators that used to be like, you can lone gun this, you know, you could just completely go on the map and you put one gadget down and you're free to go. But now with all these changes, I think we're seeing an increasingly team-based meta, and that makes it harder, at least in my opinion, to enjoy the game alone or even with a couple of friends in unranked or in ranked. Like, you can't run strats in ranked with 3 people because, you know, those 2 guys are going to fuck everything up. But you know, when you get like, simply just, I think the game is heading more towards, you have to have a 5 stack to enjoy it. And I don't know how I feel about that, you know, because it's going to possibly alienate a lot of those younger players or the newer, less committed players. But at the same time, you make the game more interesting and more competitive for those people in like the collegiate community who really just want to play only in the competitive setting, you know, focused on, you know, the way competitive plays out, because it is completely different to ranked, and for good reason.
Now, let me defend Ubisoft a little bit here. When they first made Siege, the point of the game, and if you go look up a lot of the titles of the game is literally supposed to be a team-based tactical shooter, right? This isn't Call of Duty. You know, everyone wants to play Siege like it's Call of Duty, but it's not. It's supposed to be a team game, and that's what it's designed around, right? So the reason that people have more fun when they're playing as a team is because that's how it's meant to be played. And when people are trying to play like Call of Duty and trying to be Rambo, and they're getting killed and they're just not having fun, that's because they're trying to play it in a way it's not meant to be played. And I think
I completely agree. Yeah. I wasn't trying to slam Ubisoft or anything for that, you know, the way the game is going on.
Oh, no, I get it.
I do think that this is the right way for the game, because it is, like you said, that's meant to be how the game is played. It is a 5 versus 5. It's not a 3v2, or it's like not 2 players and another 3 players versus 5. It's, you know, you to enjoy the game the most, it is simply, you know, sweaty 5-on-5, you know, putting the strats down and really just grinding it out, because that's where I find my enjoyment. You know, sometimes ranked can get frustrating just because people resist the meta as much as they can, which works in ranked, but like when you get to that higher level, it's just doesn't quite, you know, land.
You say sweaty 5-on-5, and I just imagine like this sweat room sauna situation, just 10 guys just staring each other down, daggers and everything. That's
Bro, no, he's right though, because solo queue is fucking horrible. Like you have to be in the, you have to sit down and say, I want to go through hell today. If you about to solo queue, like it's fucking horrible. And
I feel like that. I feel that every time.
Exactly.
What I've found is that I have solo queued through every single rank. I did a little experiment one time, and I solo queue literally through every single rank, starting from copper to bronze to silver to gold to platinum, right? And as so I found out that nobody talks at all, right? And this is on PC.
Okay.
Nobody talks at all. Silver, nobody talks at all. Gold, you start to get some talkers, but not that many. When you get into platinum, plat 3, you get some talkers, but it's more of like shit talkers. You get into plat 2, when people say that there's a distinct line between plat 3 and plat 2, they're correct. There is a massive difference between a plat 3 player and a plat 2 player, because you get into plat 2, people are talking to each other. Everyone on the team is talking. Everyone on the team is serious. Everyone on the team knows their stuff, and they play it as a team-based game. Get into high plat 2, it's